and Jordanian field hospital. I have very grave concerns that these chaotic and mass evacuation orders are ineffective in ensuring the safety of Palestinian civilians, instead placing them in increasingly vulnerable, dangerous situation. Attacks on hospitals, schools, and other places of refuge have repeatedly displaced Palestinians into ever smaller areas, with ever decreasing access to the essentials needed to sustain life. Such a failure violates Israel's obligation under international law. Having personally witnessed and heard the testimonies of those who have endured so much pain and suffering, I'm very, very worried. I fear that many more civilians will die. The continued attacks on specifically protected facilities, such as hospitals, will kill civilians, and there will be a further massive impact on access to healthcare, safety, and security in general of Palestinians. We're also very worried about the impact of the rainy, cold weather in Gaza, which was entirely predictable at this time of the year, and risks making an already unsanitary situation completely uninhabitable for the people. Most have no warm clothes or blankets. Northern Gaza, where IDF bombardment continues, is barely accessible, even to provide basic humanitarian aid. The apparent disregard for international law needs to end. The violence needs to end. Humanitarian aid needs to be delivered without impediment to all those who need it. We urge a ceasefire immediately. We urge the release of hostages, and we urge a political solution to the causes of this conflict that respects and ensures the right of all Palestinians and Israelis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajit. And I'll go straight to the journalist and see if there are questions in the room. Gabriela, was that a hand? Gabrielle? No? Anybody has a question here? Sorry. I don't see any hand up, so let's go to the platform. Yuria Prelev, RIA Novosti.
Yes, thank you, Alessandra, for taking my question for this briefing. There is a feeling that no UN call, nor the Security Council resolutions, nor the discussions between the UN and Israel have any impact on the conflict. Your office still has no access to Gaza, Israel, or the occupied territories. In your opinion, is the UN devoid of authority over this conflict, and how can there be a determination of responsibilities and any justice in these conditions? Do you call on the states that have influence to take much more radical decisions than up to now? Thank you.
Ravina.
Thank you. I'll give an initial answer and then I'll pass the floor to Ajit in case he has something to add. Ajit has just been in Gaza, where he said he has witnessed, even in the middle of all the chaos and all the trauma, that human rights NGOs are continuing to work. They are continuing to try to document what is going on. In the fog of war, we are seeing many incidents where there is, just abdication of responsibility. There is blame being thrown around over who is responsible for which attack that ended up resulting in civilians being killed, injured severely. It is very important that we continue our human rights work as well, that we do not lose, the motivation to continue this work, to continue to document and to air what is going on, to shine a spotlight on what is going on. That is our role as the UN Human Rights Office, and to continue to insist on accountability as well. At the international level, there is certainly much more that could be done. The High Commissioner has repeatedly called on all states with influence to exercise that influence bilaterally and in multilateral fora to bring this horror to an end. Ajit, would you like to add anything?
Thanks, Ravina. Just maybe a couple of quick words. Yes, I mean, we have international staff waiting to receive visas. Of course, we continue to put pressure on that. I have access for now, and I hope that continues. We have extremely qualified national staff, both in Gaza and West Bank, who've been able to do a lot of work. So we continue to do that part. Yes, I completely agree. Member states can do more. We continue to brief them. I briefed them recently, and I have a few more briefings in the pipeline to a number of states. States with influence do need to step in and put pressure. Thank you.
I would add that, of course, I mean, you all have heard the Secretary General not only saying exactly what Ravina has just said, the calling on all states who have an influence on the conflict to fully exercise it, but also doing everything he can, speaking with everybody he can in order to make sure that the international community is fully united to stop the conflict. And I would also add that Sigrid Kaag, as you know, is now in the region, meeting with everybody she can. She's been going around. We have given you information about her whereabouts, and her work is going to be key, I think, for helping advancing on the road to the end, at least to a ceasefire. I will now go to Isabel. Isabel Sacco is our correspondent of EFE, Spanish news agency.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I would like to know if Ajit can say for how long the international staff is waiting for the visas. Also, if he can give us an update on what kind of relationship or contacts, dialogue do you have in these days with the Israeli authorities, and what do they say to your, I mean, if any answer or response to your calls to stop the attacks in populated areas and to resolve this issue of attacks on areas that they themselves designate as safe and where they advise people to go to. Thank you.
Ajit.
Thank you, Isabel. I mean, the international staff have been waiting for their visas for the last 3 years. I recently received it. Of course, it's short term, but with the hope that it will be extended. But otherwise, rest of them for the last 3 years. I do not have direct dialogue with the Israeli authorities, and any such dialogue happens at Geneva level. We do write letters to them, again, from Geneva level, and Ravina can say more about it. In terms of change on the ground, of course, we have not seen much. And this is exactly the point, you know. We have constantly seen that civilians are killed, hospitals are still being attacked, schools are still being attacked, places that are called safe are also being attacked. And that's exactly why we have been coming out with statements stressing on these aspects, and they have to change. And these are not according to international law.
Thanks, Isabella. Just to supplement, as Ajit said, there is contact with the Israeli permanent mission with Israeli authorities from Geneva. So the High Commissioner has sent letters to the authorities. We do share reports with them before they're published. Most recently, the West Bank detentions report that was put out in mid-December was shared with them for any comment before it was published. And so our concerns are expressed to them both directly, and we do feel the need to raise the alarm publicly as well. We have had no formal response from them.
Thank you. Mohammed Aslan Anadoluansi, the Turkish news agency.
Okay, thank you so much, Alessandra. There is a big hunger crisis in Gaza, as you know. Neither United Nations nor other aid organization can overcome the Israeli obstacle and reach the region. We watch the images of people are eating animal feed, and also animals are eating dead body of people. My question is, if these are not crimes against humanity, in what category should they be considered? Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. And as you surely remember, we had a briefing of the World Food Programme I think it was our last briefing on the food insecurity situation in Gaza. I don't know if Ramina wants to comment on the last part of your question, but definitely we are in an alarming food security situation and it's only getting worse.
Actually, Alessandra, if I could pass the floor to Ajit, I think he has some personal accounts to share of food availability, including just his own experience being there on the ground and seeing what UN staff have been having to manage with.
Indeed, Ajit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, now you're on.
Yeah. No, I think the severe shortage of food is something that's visible. People are struggling, and this is the case throughout Gaza, but even more so in the north of Gaza, northern Gaza, where convoys of food are unable to reach, and there's a desperate need for this. I have heard stories of families that have only had one meal a day if they're lucky. There are families that have gone to bed with no food on a particular day. I have seen when cooked meals are brought by NGOs on a cart, hundreds of kids who you can see everywhere run behind those carts for food. That's desperate situation. I've also heard stories of sharing food, lack of food, desperation, etc., etc. So agree, there's a massive urgent need for humanitarian aid in that sense.
Thank you, Mohammed. Do you have a follow-up?
I have a follow-up. Yes, thank you, Alessandra. My question for Ravina. Ravina, how would you describe that animals are eating dead body of people? What would you like to say about it? Thank you.
Mohammed, I haven't seen the specific horrific report that you're referring to. What is clear is that a lot of people remain under the rubble. So when we talk about the death toll that's being published by the Gaza Ministry of Health, that is people who have been confirmed to have been killed, but thousands more are suspected to be under the rubble. And when we saw the weather forecast, when we saw that rains and bitter cold is hitting Gaza now, it's unimaginable to even begin to think about the suffering of the people.
Indeed. Lisa Schlein, Voice of America.
Good morning. Yes, thank you, Alessandro. Good morning, Ajit. It's nice to see you, but horrible to hear what you have to say, I must say. I would like to ask you, you were talking about your great concerns about violence spilling over into Rafah. If you could elaborate upon that, what you mean, and whether I've read that Egypt also has great concerns that perhaps this might spill over more into its territory. Is that a possibility in terms of people actually rushing the border and going into Egypt? I don't know what the possible scenario might be, if you could elaborate upon that. And then I would, Christian is there from WHO. If you could perhaps tell us about the latest situation regarding the health conditions and the numbers of attacks. I think that attacks have increased and become even more violent. Thank you.
Ajit and then Christian.
Thanks, Lisa. I think the current situation itself is catastrophic, like I mentioned, but I think if what is happening in Khan Yunis continues the way it is, at the intensity that we are seeing, bombardment and fights and displacement of thousands of people, and there were hundreds of thousands in Khan Yunis already displaced from the north of Gaza. If they move into Rafah, which is already packed, And there are about 1.3 million people in Rafah, which usually used to accommodate about 280,000 pre-7th of October. It's packed. There's no space. People are angry. There's no food, like I mentioned. There can be a civil disorder, and that's one thing, a breakdown of any kind of civil order. That's for number one. The second, if the incursions and the bombardment or the street-to-street fight moves from Khan Yunis into Rafah, that will be disastrous further, because there are only two places people can flee to. One is on one side, you have the Mediterranean Sea. On the other side, you have the Egyptian border. You have fight in the north and you have fight on the Khan Yunis side. So you can only speculate what's going to happen. And we are talking about 1.3 million already. And if you have people moving in large numbers from Khan Yunis and other places, this is going to be a massive catastrophe.
And I would add that the Secretary General has indeed underlined the risk of that the total collapse of the humanitarian support system in Gaza would have devastating consequences, including a complete breakdown of public order and increased pressure for mass displacement into Egypt, devastating consequences for the security of the entire region. I go to Satok. Oh, no, sorry. We have to listen from Christian on the second part of Lisa's question. Sorry. Christian, you have the floor.
Hello, welcome, and thank you, Lisa, for that question. A bit on the raw figures as you asked. So, as the colleagues mentioned, we have now registered over 26,000 deaths, with 75% being children and women. At least 60,000 registered injuries, but as colleagues also just said, over 8,000 missing and presumed to be dead under the rubble. They have not yet been counted into the casualty count, and many more under the rubble, and maybe not, and maybe still suffering. We have 676 attacks verified in the occupied Palestinian territories, and that's 318 in Gaza and 358 in the West Bank. I find this always important to note that we have more attacks in the West Bank than in Gaza, and that's with the horrific scenario we know from Gaza. Only 14 out of the 36 health facilities, the hospitals, are partially functioning for the whole of Gaza. 7 in the south, 7 in the north, 20 hospitals are not functioning at all. Important that from these 7 partially functioning health facilities like Al-Khair and El Nasser hospitals are only minimally functioning and not accessible. The bed occupancy in those functioning is over 200–300%. But these are just the sheer numbers. We need to think about what this actually means, because the few functional hospitals in Gaza are in absolute dire circumstances, with hostilities often preventing the access for patients and supplies, like we have in El Nasser right now. People sheltering inside, the area outside under attack, the hospital basically under siege. Nobody can go in, nobody can go out. People not knowing what the next minutes will bring, fearing for their lives, as they are in a hospital which should be a refuge for those seeking help, for those injured, for those wounded, for those with diseases. Disease surveillance remains disrupted, something which we like to keep forgetting. That means laboratories have been shut down or are non-functional anymore. Transporting of samples is difficult, if not impossible. It makes a challenge to accurately assess the scale of any disease transmission. So we are concerned, on top of all this, that the numbers could be much higher than the current limited surveillance system is able to detect.
Thank you, Lisa. You have a follow-up.
Yes, very quickly. Christian, thank you so much for that. If you could send us notes with, that have the numbers and stuff, that would be fine. And Ajit, I asked you about the situation, the concerns that Egypt has been more and more vocal about, and wondering whether there could actually be a kind of physical rush of people into Egypt, and what this might involve. Thank you.
Lisa, I think that is a terrible situation if that happens, because clearly it impacts the security, it impacts the people in thousands. It's something we are dreading and hoping it doesn't get there. But this is exactly my fear, as I've been saying, that all the indications that we have at this point in time is if Rafah is attacked, then we are in uncharted territory, if I have to put it in that way.
Thank you. Yeah, no, sorry, I've got people waiting on the platform. Satoko Adachi, Yumiuri Shimbun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing this. With regards to the humanitarian aid, there are some reports saying that Israeli protesters have gathered at the Kerem Shalom crossing in attempts to block a convoy of aid trucks from entering Gaza. And do you know what they are really demanding while the UN fears famine is on the ground?
Maybe Ajit, I'm not sure I understood fully your question. Satoko, you said you wanted to know what we think about the fact that people are trying to get this.
Because Ajita was there at the near the, he was in the Rafah, so maybe he had information about these protesters demanding, the blocking humanitarian aid to go into the Gaza.
I'm sorry, unfortunately, I don't have information on that.
Oh, okay. I see Jens is moving towards the podium, so maybe Ocha has something more about that. Jens, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Good morning, everyone. I think you're referring to the protest that's Kerem Shalom.
Yes, that's what you said.
Okay. So the day before yesterday, trucks at the Kerem Shalom crossing were held up for several hours by Israeli protesters attempting to block the entry of humanitarian aid. As a result, only 9 trucks were able to enter, and many were forced to reroute to Egypt at the Rafah crossing. So that is what I had on that particular incident. As you know, there are only those 2 crossings in use. We have a fact sheet where you can see the daily entry of trucks. So of course that day there were a lot less trucks than were expected.
Don't know if Satoko has raised their hands. Maybe just wait 1 second, Jens. Satoko?
Yes, I saw that in the OCHA Fresh report, but it didn't say what this protester is really demanding for.
Well, it's not really for me to brief on what the protesters are demanding, but I have given you the facts that we have, and of course we regret that the outcome was that there were less trucks than we had expected.
Thank you. And Ajit, please, I see you have your mic on. Is there something you want to add about that? No, okay,
No,
fine.
thank you.
So let's go to the next question here in the room. Gabrielle, Reuters.
Sorry, Jens, I think you might need to stay up there. Sorry. Just a quick question that would be both for OCHA and WHO, if possible. You had United Nations Resident Coordinator for Humanitarian Coordinator in the occupied territories, Jamie McGoldrick, who mentioned yesterday that among the things that were prevented from being brought into Gaza are medical materials to treat chronic diseases, including children's insulin injections. So we're just wondering, when did Israel add insulin pens to the restricted items, and what's the status on getting them into Gaza? Are there negotiations between UN and COGAT to get the pens removed from the list that's not allowed in, the insulin pens? And if you have any information on what type of medication this is, and what is being allowed, and what is not being allowed in terms of insulin. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me answer the part of the question that I can. And my comment on that is that the UN on the ground is working together with the Israeli authorities to look at how we can address the issue of restricted items and find ways to get those critical items released.
Christian, do you have any specific information on the issue of the insulin pens?
No, unfortunately, I don't have any specifics. I can only say that a total of 88 WHO tracks until 18 January has reached Gaza, but I don't know any specifics about one item or the other.
Thank you to both colleagues. Jeremy. Sorry for Ajit. Jeremy Lange is our correspondent of RFI.
Hi, Christian. Just a quick clarification. Did I hear that right? You said that you have more attacks against health facilities in the West Bank than in Gaza, or is it? Did I miss something?
Christian?
Yes and no. So there are indeed more health attacks on health. That's important to note, right? In the West Bank than in Gaza, but the quality is slightly different. The 318 attacks in the Gaza Strip have resulted in 615 fatalities and 778 injuries. The attacks have affected 95 healthcare facilities, including 27 hospitals, damaged out of 36, and they affected 85 ambulances. In the West Bank, 358 attacks have resulted in 7 fatalities and 59 injuries. The attacks have affected 44 health facilities, including 15 mobile clinics and 245 ambulances. Important, and I will give these figures, send them out or put them in the chat, because I know there are a lot of figures now. An attack on health is also preventing an ambulance from reaching wounded or reaching injured people. It's not only shelling and bombing a hospital, so that's why they're all counted as attacks on health, but the quality is very different.
Christian, if you could send your figure by email instead of then in the chat, because the people who are in the room, they will not be able to see it. So as we were asked from by the journalists last time, if the information can be sent by email to all the accredited journalists, it would be appreciated. We still have 2 follow-ups from Isabel and Yuri. So I'll start with Isabel.
Yes, thank you again. Jens, just I would like to know if, since the incidents to the protest 2 days ago in Kerem Shalom, the operation through this crossing has been resumed normally. And to Ravina or to Ajit, I would like to ask about, I read that yesterday there has been a group of Palestinians who were waiting close to a roundabout in Gaza city, and they were attacked by the Israeli military, and there were 20 Palestinian deaths in that incident. I would like to know if you have confirmed this incident and if you have more details. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the crossings have resumed at Kerem Shalom.
Ajit, Can you confirm or infirm what?
Thank you,
tell us?
Isabel. These are very serious reports that are coming in. I can say that the team is on it. We are trying to gather more information. All I can say is it's extremely serious and worrying. We have seen similar attacks in the past, so we need some time to assess this, but the team is gathering more information.
And Yuri?
Yes, thank you. This is not really a follow-up because this is a question for Ravina, but not about Gaza. I don't know if I can ask it or if we don't.
Ravina has 2 more points to brief you about, but let me see if there is any other question on Gaza so that we can free Ajit. If there is any other, I don't see any other hand up. So Yuri, if you don't mind, let us listen. First of all, thank you very much, Jens, and thanks very, very much, Ajit. Please come back and keep us informed about the situation in the territory. Ravina has 2 other points. Maybe we will listen to that. And then, Yuri, if your question is about one of the other 2 points, I'll give you the floor. Otherwise, we'll take your question after that she's finished her briefing. Ravina. So, in fact, I think the first point is the International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust that, as you all know, is commemorated by the international community on the 27th of January. We will commemorate this International Day at the Palais des Nations today at 1 o'clock in room 18, and we will all be waiting for you to join us. And I would like to add that this year, the focus of the commemoration is on recognizing the extraordinary courage of victims and survivors of the Holocaust. And Ravina has more from the High Commissioner.
Thanks, Alessandra. You all will have already received a statement from the High Commissioner for Human Rights ahead of tomorrow's Holocaust Memorial Day. I'll just read out some of the some of the key points that the High Commissioner wanted to make. This is a day of profound importance. We remember and honor the millions of victims of the Nazi Holocaust, children, women, men on whom atrocious suffering and injustice were inflicted by an abominable machinery of mass murder. Some 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, 1.5 million of them children. Millions of other people from targeted groups were also murdered, including Roma and Sinti people, Slavs, people with disabilities, LGBTIQ+ people, members of resistance networks, and other opponents of Nazism. The scale of these crimes engaged many perpetrators. The Nazi concentration camps and death trains were staffed. The victims had often been identified to the police and therefore sent to their deaths by people whom they knew. Countless bystanders looked away from or were indifferent to what they must have suspected was extraordinary inhuman brutality. The dehumanization that enabled the Holocaust, the depth and scale of this failure of empathy and fellow feeling for the other human beings is incomprehensible and terrifying. It is our duty to seek answers to how these crimes could have been prevented. If we do not, they could happen again. The High Commissioner pays tribute to the extraordinary courage and important lessons that so many survivors have brought to us and admires their resilience. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Anti-Semitism and all forms of racism and racial or religious discrimination are intolerable. They are unacceptable. Today and forever, we must stand against dehumanization. We must work to overcome indifference and strengthen our understanding of and empathy with others. The atrocious crimes of the Holocaust must never be forgotten.
Thank you very much, Ravina. And at the commemoration, we'll of course hear from the Director General, and the Secretary General will also hold a commemoration at this on Geneva time in New York. Any question on this particular subject? I see Jeremy.
Ravina, given the context this year, particular context, did you have any difficulties with organizing this commemoration? Yeah, that's it.
Actually, the commemoration is organized by NOG. You want to say
No,
something?
but I mean, that
No.
the High Commissioner was very clear in his message. You know, this was a singularly horrific event in history. We must not forget it. And we must learn the lessons that it teaches us, including the importance of not dehumanizing the other and the importance of not turning away from human suffering because it enables further suffering.
Yeah, and on the organization of the commemoration, no, Jeremy, we are organizing this. As long as I can remember, it has always been a big ceremony in Geneva. And this year, as in the previous years, we will hear from the Director General, we will hear from the Ambassador of Israel and Permanent Representative of Israel to the UN, and also from the head of the European Union delegation to the UN. And we will listen to the witness of a lady who survived the Holocaust, and she's actually flown from Israel with her family to bring witness of what she suffered during under the Nazi regime. So the ceremony is there, and we hope that you will be able to participate, to be with us for this important commemoration. And maybe you want to go to your last point. We've already heard you talking to us about the nitrogen gases execution. You have a follow-up on that?
No, indeed, Alessandra, in spite of our plea, the execution, as you know, went ahead. The High Commissioner issued a statement earlier today, which you should have all received. We deeply regret the execution of Kenneth Eugene Smith in Alabama, despite serious concerns that this novel and untested method of suffocation by nitrogen gas may amount to torture, cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. The death penalty is inconsistent with the fundamental right to life, and we urge all states to put in place a moratorium on its use as a step towards universal abolition.
Thank you very much. Any question on this issue of the execution, Robin?
Thank you. There seem to be some concerns in the United States about the length of time that it took for Mr. Smith to die. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, we've been following the reports, and there are reports that it may have taken up to 25 minutes. It's unclear exactly, and he was writhing and clearly suffering. Listen, what we said is that rather than looking for novel, untested methods to execute people, let's just bring an end to the death penalty. This is an anachronism that doesn't belong in the 21st century. There is no proof that the death penalty deters crime, but on the contrary, there is a lot of evidence of miscarriages of justice, of discrimination in application of the death penalty, which disproportionately is applied on people who are minorities, people who are from poorer backgrounds. So it is time to bring this to an end. What we are concerned about and why we're being so vocal on this is that we are worried that this will now be adopted as an accepted method of execution. We've already seen some other US states that have approved its use, and we would urge them not to use nitrogen gas to execute people and to really work towards a moratorium.
Yuri, is your question about this, or I will ask you to wait?
No, I will wait, Alessandra.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll go to Lisa.
Hi, Ravina, you're so clever. You preempted my question, but I'll ask it anyway and elaborate a bit upon it. Well, I have heard that there are actually about 100 people on death row in Alabama alone, and that doesn't take into account the number of other people who are in death row in other states, so-called red states. And so I was wondering about whether you were concerned that what happened with this particular execution, that it would open up the floodgates to similar forms of execution with nitrogen gas, because the Alabama authorities, from what I've heard, are kind of very pleased with the way that it went. You know, somehow a half an hour of writhing in pain doesn't seem to bother them very much. Thank you.
Yes, Lisa, we saw that the authorities issued a statement saying that it worked, and it a satisfactory method of execution. It is not. It is not. It could amount to torture, inhuman, degrading treatment, in violation of the treaties, the human rights treaties that the United States has signed. We are concerned because 3 other U.S. states, as far as we're aware, have approved this method: Mississippi, Oklahoma. Actually, 3 states in total, sorry, Mississippi, Oklahoma, in addition to Alabama, have approved this method, whereas in Nebraska, a bill to approve the method has been presented. So we are very worried that this could open the door to further executions, and this is why we feel the need to speak out again clearly that this is not acceptable.
Jamie?
Good morning, Ravina. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, I noted that you have been speaking out on this issue. Does the Human Rights Office have any other action planned? In other words, legal action or various or other measures, either appealing to international jurisdictions or what have you, to try to take action against what you obviously mentioned, and the High Commissioner also both mentioned about, the possibility this may amount to torture, cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. What actions can the Human Rights Office take?
Well, what's in our toolkit, Jamie, is appealing to the governments directly, speaking to them, writing to them. So the High Commissioner has written to the authorities in Alabama on this issue. And we are speaking out publicly. The UN Human Rights Committee has also spoken out about this issue in the review of the United States. So we do try to use every tool in our toolbox to try to influence the situation. And again, to try to prevent others from following suit.
Nick?
Yeah, good morning, Ravina. Thank you. I notice you're still saying this could amount to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment and torture. On the evidence of what happened in this particular case, could you revise that? Could you say whether it does or doesn't actually amount to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment? Thank you.
No, I'm afraid we can't, Nick. We were not there. We saw the protocols. We did not think they were adequate. We've seen the reports that are coming out on how the execution was conducted. So I'm afraid we can't, come to a definitive conclusion. But this is a warning bell, and I hope it rings loudly. This is a warning bell that this could amount to torture in violation of international human rights law, and it must stop.
I think there are no other questions on this subject, Ravina. So let's go to Yuri for his question.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for, don't forget it. Ravina, regarding the fall of an EL-76 in Belgorod that was shut down by Ukraine, now all the forces are agreed that it was shut down by them. Your office told me today that it is looking for more information. So I just wanted to know if you are in contact with the Russian and the Ukrainian authorities to obtain some more details on that. And if you have asked to send a team on site to Russia to conduct investigations, because this is one of the things Ukraine is asking for. So just to know if you have something on that. Thank you.
Yuri, I don't have an update. Our office is looking for information and trying to understand and substantiate exactly what happened. I do not know if they have asked for access on this particular incident. Previously, they have asked for access to Russian territory and Russian occupied territory. But on that specific question, let me get back to you. Other than that, we are still trying to obtain more information about this terrible incident.
Maybe just to add to that, Yuri, that yesterday the spokesperson of the Secretary General was asked about the request of President Zelensky for an independent international investigation and if the UN were involved. And he also said that we're not aware of any involvement of the UN at this point. The only thing he added is that this was a military plane, so it's not something that the International Civil Aviation Organization, that as you know is part of the UN family, would have a mechanism or jurisdiction over. I can send you this in writing if you want, but that is about what I have. You have to add something?
Just back to Alabama, colleagues have just informed me that the Committee Against Torture, the UN Committee Against Torture, is due to review the U.S. next year. So this issue is certainly likely to come up. U.S. obviously is a party to the Convention Against Torture.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you, and thanks to Ravina for this extensive briefing. And I'll now go to Christian, who has an announcement. Thank you, Ravina.
Yeah, thank you again. We sent you this morning again the invitation to the registration for the press briefing, the virtual press briefing next Tuesday at 3 o'clock by the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, looking out towards the Conference of the Parties, which is about to start the Monday after. The interesting topics, of course, the advertising, but also novel and emerging tobacco products, and that is another name for the vaping and everything else. Important you register for this briefing because you will get an extra link sent by the FCTC media team. So don't register with us, register through the link that's in there, and do it please ahead of time, not just the minutes before. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. Any other question to WHO? Don't see any hand up. Thank you very much. No? Okay. Thank you very much, Christian. Yes, I thought I saw a hand. Paula.
Yes, good morning. Just wanted to know if you could describe a little bit the build up to this convention out of Geneva, please.
Christian? Is that a question for Christian, Paula? Sorry.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What convention are you talking about the Framework Convention?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control is an international treaty working on tobacco control with some 180 plus parties to this convention. So it's an international treaty which is housed in WHO. And it's the COP number 10, so the Conference of the Parties number 10. They have a conference every 2 years, which shows you they're already existing since quite a while. Quite some good background. You will see a lot of links for possible background in the media advisory. So I encourage you to look into this. And again, they have a 1 week conference in Panama with all the parties, member states to this really interesting coming up.
Thank you very much. Any other question for Christian? No? Okay, so let me just give you a couple of other information about the meetings of the Human Rights Treaty Body, particularly the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, that is going to start on Monday, 29th of January. It's 87th session, which will last until the 16th of February here at the Palais des Nations. They will review the reports of Niger, Tajikistan, Italy, Turkmenistan, Greece, Oman, Djibouti, and Central African Republic. And the Committee on the Rights of the Child is concluding its session on the 2nd of February. They will have next Thursday afternoon a meeting with state parties, and then they will close on the Friday, 2nd of February. And just for your information, as you know, yesterday there was a plenary meeting of the Conference of Disarmament. The next one will be held on Tuesday morning, 30th of January. And this is what I had for you. If there are no further questions, thank you very much to you all. I hope I'll see you at 1 o'clock in room 18 for the commemoration of the Holocaust. And otherwise, have a nice weekend, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.